I'm going to go ahead and start recording then. So remember, if at any point I go a little bit too fast or a lot too fast, just yell at me. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the image that's 1363. And I'm really just going to work on this file like I would as if I were at home, okay? And the first thing that I'd want to do is I just want to zoom in on it and maybe decide on a size to crop it down to, and then crop the other one down to a similar size as well. So whenever you want to crop an image, you can just hit C and it'll take you right to that crop tool, right? So this shortcut right here. And for this particular image, again, you can just grab it like this, and I always like to go a little bit beyond. And you can also come here and essentially tell it the size to cut. So if you know that you want it to be a square, you can do something like this. It'll make it a square. You can do the 4:5 ratio. And I can even, oh, I don't want to flip it that way. Let me hit Control Z. I can switch it. Do you see these little buttons right here? I can change the 4:5 aspect here, the 5:7. Again, I can flip the aspect there. And really, because it's Photoshop, I'm kind of just eyeballing exactly where to put the frame around the image. And like I said, I want some breathing room around it. And I think that for now that works well. So as soon as you find a place where you're happy, go ahead and hit enter. And it should accept those changes. Okay, and then as soon as you hit enter, don't forget to hit the V button. So if you look at my cursor right now, I'm going to kind of place it on the page. Right now my cursor is still set to crop mode. When I hit V, it takes it back to my selection tool or my move tool, which is a lot easier to work in. You don't want to keep accidentally cropping stuff. And then I hit Control 0 to do a zoom all. Unfortunately, the mouse clicker double click trick doesn't work, so I'm almost always do my Control 0s as I'm working. Okay, so let's start off with some pretty basic stuff, I think, to begin with. What I'd like to do right now is change some of the overall levels so that maybe the whites on the boards get a little bit brightened, maybe some of the colors get a little bit brightened. I'm going to zoom in just a couple more times to see the overall board, but really this is a pretty good picture. So I'm just going to see how I can change the levels, and I'm going to do that with a layer mask that goes over everything. So do you guys see this kind of like, I don't know, half moon button down at the bottom? So this is a new fill or adjustment layer. Again, depending on when you took this class, I have no idea what I was just clicking on, sorry. Depending on when you took this class, you may or may not have used these before. So I will pull down on here. And again, I want to go to levels. Did everybody find that okay? Don't forget to yell at me if I lose ya. So as soon as you do that, let's take a look at our menus real quick. So I was in layers and I put on this mask. Let me delete this one because that one's garbage. That was my accident click. But do you see how I have this levels mask right here? If I click on the actual levels portion of it and go under properties, that's where I can change the levels. So when you add the mask, by default, it automatically takes you to the properties of the mask. Does that make sense? So if you want to go back to your layers, go to layers. If you want to keep making adjustments to that mask, go to properties.
So how do you, sorry, this old brain. I'm trying to make a new layer. Is it just a right click and then it will?
Nope, so down here,
Circle.
nope, down here. Do you see how they're in the center of your options here? Pull down and add a new levels mask. So this is really where all the fun stuff is in Photoshop, a lot of your editing tools. So we'll start with levels and I'll show you guys a few more. And after you guys have that added, again, you're probably here already, you can come through and change some of these properties. So right now, the middle toggle isn't helping me very much, right? So I'm going to leave that there. But over here to the right, I'm going to start pulling this one. And do you see how my whites are starting to get brighter? Like everything in general is getting a little bit brighter. And then if I come from the left, my blacks are getting a little bit richer and darker. Do you guys see that? Okay. And the thing about this levels mask is that it's kind of subjective. You get to decide when it looks right to you. My rule of thumb is that just make sure your whites look white and that your blacks look black, and sometimes there's this fine line between your colors having nice contrast or getting cartoony. Okay, so just watch out for that. Did that work for everybody? Yeah? Now what I'm gonna do here, and this is gonna hurt some of your brains, but this is something that you have to remember. And 1250, the Photoshop class, I think should just be renamed Masking in Photoshop, okay? So let's take a look at this layer I put on here. We're gonna do a little bit of a quiz. You guys have to tell me what this mask means. So right now, this mask that's level 1 is the color white. What does the color white mean in masks? What was that? Yeah, so right now, because that whole layer is painted white, it means that essentially everything that's white is fair game, okay? If I were, what color masks? Black, yep. So black is a masking layer. So just a really quick example of this. Do you see the subtle difference between clicking on the properties of the mask and then clicking on the actual mask? Do you guys see that there's a difference there? Properties of the mask and then the mask itself. Okay, so Darlene, take a look at where the white edges are. Here or here. Do you see that subtle difference? So this is the properties, and then that's the actual mask.
I was looking at the picture expecting it to change.
Nope, it's not changing yet, but it's important to know where the change is, because here's what I'm going to do. So Darlene just helped me out and said that anything that's painted black will be masked. And so right now, for a quick example, I'm just going to grab a brush, and on my layer mask, do you guys see what's happening here when I paint this black? So am I actually painting it black and making it darker by coloring over it? I'm not. What I'm doing is I am excluding this star from the mask that's making it brighter. So take a look at this. If I completely turn this off, do you see how everything else matches the dullness of that? Does that make sense what I did there? So the reason why I want to show you guys is that sometimes, most of the time, you want to put your mask on everything, you know, and everything should be white. But if you ever want to exclude something, you just have to mask it. And you also have to remember that to mask something, you use the color black. When we go through our 1250 class, most of the time we're selecting it using a marquee or a quick selection tool, and we're using the bucket fill to make it black. I just did the brush really quick because it's a little bit quicker. Okay, so right now, for this particular mask, let's say that, let me turn this off real quick. Let's say that the purple just got way too vibrant. Okay, all of the other colors, well, maybe even, let's say that the pink and the purple on the bottom have been distorted so much because of the levels that we want to essentially uninclude them from the mask. Okay, so what we would do now, see how I have the mask selected? That's where I want to paint. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit M for marquee, and the marquee allows me to select this paint swatch. Now I am not doing this fancy at all. You know, I'm not looking at all of like the little triangular points. And then I'm going to go G for gradient to go back to my bucket. And I'm going to fill in the mask with the paint color. And see how it takes it back to that kind of original duller pink? Maybe that's how I wanted it to look. And I'm not done yet. I'm going to draw a marquee again around this purple swatch and turn off the mask there too. So try that. I want you guys to be able to isolate where you want the mask to be on or off. I'm basically redoing that same thing right now, but I'm using one of my wands, the quick selection wand. And the quick selection wand is a little bit better about getting some of the pokies on the outside. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that the wand actually went through and got a little bit more of the pink. Right now it got too much, but if you wanted it to be a little bit more precise, you could use that as well. Okay, so again, that's a W for wand, and again, I'm just using the quick selection tool. It does a pretty good job of trying to find those areas. Whoops.
And then what are you using to mask it? The paint bucket?
Yep,
You
the
don't
paint.
see it on mine.
So on yours, by default, it's the gradient tool. Do you see how mine looks like this now? I just changed it. So if you hit G, it'll get you to the gradient, but then you might have to right click on it and change it back to the paint bucket.
And then it's automatically going to be black if I click on the little pink.
Yeah, if you have it selected, yes. If you have it, so Janelle, two things to remember. As long as you have this area selected, and as long as you have your layer mask selected too. Where are you?
What am I doing wrong? I have everything to paint bucket, but
Do you have an area selected to paint yet?
I do.
Will you zoom in a little bit for me so I can see your little ants marching? So hit Control plus. That should zoom you in. So Control and the plus sign. Okay, great. So you're trying to mask the orange off, is that right?
No, that's
Okay, so make sure that, so here's a couple things to make sure of. You're on the paint bucket, right?
I am.
Okay, is it black paint?
It is.
Okay, and then do you have your mask selected?
I do.
Okay, so as long as your mask is selected, you should be able to, sorry, let me come over here. Here's my little ants marching. Do you see mine? You should be able to just hit gradient right in there. I've already done that one, so that doesn't help you. Let me do my orange one. But you should be able to just spill it right in there.
How come my ants aren't marching?
So if your ants aren't marching, you don't have anything selected yet. So hit M for marquee or W for wand to actually select something to mask.
I have white lines, I put a mask there, but they're not marching.
So what do you mean you put white lines there? I don't know what the white lines are.
Well, you see how your ants are marching around where you did with the marquee?
Yeah. So do this, hit Control D.
Mine will not march.
That's okay, Control D makes you deselect it, okay? So to select something, if you just hit Control D, right?
Yeah.
So Control D deselects something. Now to get ants marching on your screen, I'm going to show you guys two ways again. So right now, Kelly, hit M for marquee, and your cursor will turn into this plus sign. Okay? Now just click and drag, and you should see ants marching.
Apparently somehow it masked because it's masked up here.
Do you see a little black area?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try another area just to make sure it works. And then here's the other way that you can do it. I'm going to hit Control D. You can hit the wand. So I hit W for wand. And if I right click, again, I love the quick selection tool. Ignore the magic wand. When we do the Photoshop class, I have everybody try all of them. Nobody likes the magic wand tool. Everybody likes the quick selection tool. And essentially with the quick selection, you just kind of click and drag, and it's pretty good about grabbing an area.
So I'm working along with Kelly, but I have marching ants, but it won't do anything.
So you're trying to mask it, right?
Yeah, so I got
'Kay.
on, changed the properties of the whole thing.
Yep.
I've got the pink selected.
Okay.
I've got the pink bucket on my screen.
Okay, let's do this. Two things to check. Do you have the levels mask selected right here and not the properties?
I have levels. Is that what I want? Levels?
Yep. So you want your box to be around this. And then over here is your color black?
So the top color should be black?
Yeah. Your foreground
How do I
color.
do that?
If they're switched, just do you see this little corner arrow? You can use that to flip them from black to white.
So the color, the masking has to be on top?
That's not the, so this color right here is the color that's on top. If you go back and think about InDesign, right? We have the foreground color and then we have a stroke color. So this color in the back is either the background or the stroke color, and that's not what we're working on. We want the foreground color to be black.
I need to retake this class, obviously.
Or watch the videos. Or watch the videos.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch all the videos. Oh my goodness.
This is really, this stuff that we're doing, it's so important. I use it all the time, and in fact, if you follow me on Instagram, I know some of you guys do, I am trying to figure out what to do with my own house. And it only took me about 20 minutes to mock up these different garage door paint ideas. And it's all Photoshop. It's like, no, no. This is just me. This is me just trying to figure out what I want to do. I really don't want to paint the brick. I'm so against painting brick. So I'm like, no. Yeah. But in real life, I don't know. And yeah, and this isn't the right door color. I need more of a walnut, but we'll figure it out.
Zombie Barbies.
It was really fun. Okay, so that's just the first of many masks. But the thing that I tell everybody, that the levels mask will get you essentially the most bang for your buck when it comes to fixing images or photos. Even if you are taking a photo on your mobile phone, the levels really helps brighten up a picture and change the brightness and contrast quickly. If you have an iPhone, it's the same. You can do a lot of this on your Sorry, just one sec. We're good.
Then once you want to secure that, like you put your thing in there, I guess that's where
Yep, Control D. That deselects it.
and then it's saved.
Yep, and then it's there. So it's always saved. But again, one thing, I just want to give you guys all these little tidbits. So if you ever wanted to take photos for your client, I don't know how to do this on an Android, but I do know that on an iPhone, if you go to edit a picture, there is one called Light that you can play with, and changing the exposure is really similar to changing the levels. So first change the exposure and then play with the brightness and contrast. So exposure first, it just adds a ton more light. It also gets rid of a lot of shadows. You can even go to shadows and get rid of it. But a lot of the stuff you can do on your phone right now, but if you're like me, you just can't see what you're doing on your phone. You need a bigger screen like this. So levels always gives you a really good bang for your buck. So it doesn't look like you took it with a camera, whether it be the camera we have here or maybe even the camera on your phone. Okay, so that's the first step, and it gives us some isolation as well. And then the other thing that I would like to do while we're in here is let's add another layer, and let's essentially just turn all of this background black. So one thing that I have learned is that it's easier to add a black background or a white background than to try to crop it out. So for example, let me show you. If I were to try and crop this out right now, do you see how it's not quite straight and this ends up getting hacked off the bottom, right? I would rather have it be a little bit bigger, a little bit more image, because I can always cut it down in InDesign. But what I'd like to do is add another layer, and it's going to be on top of everything. So here's another thing that some people don't realize is that whatever is on the top is closest to you, right? And then as you go back towards the background, those things fall back. So if you think of collaging it, layer 1, I'm going to rename black background, or maybe even black border.
Did you have to pick what kind of layer like we did the first time?
Nope, so this is just a plain layer. We're not doing any masks with this one. So I just clicked on the new layer button.
How come my level is on the last one, it's all checkerboarded?
Your levels is? Or say that again? So your levels, say that one more time slowly for this old lady.
It's checkerboarded, not like yours.
You probably erased what was there. And I don't know how that's possible because by default, it comes in white. Are you sure this is checkerboarded?
It's me, yes.
Okay, so
Anything can be jacked up.
leave that for now. Okay, leave that for now. We're gonna add another one. So I don't know if you guys have had Revit with me before, but with Revit, Photoshop, InDesign, especially Revit, if I can't figure out what's wrong, I'm erasing it and redoing it, right? So like right now, if you can't figure out why your levels is checkerboarded, whatever, let it figure out its own crap, okay? And what you can do, I will turn off this one, but I feel like you have a level because you have some good contrast on your screen.
I feel I did what you said and it was there. a minute
Okay,
ago,
but if it isn't there, would you know how to add a new one?
and a new level. Absolutely. You go right here. You go to levels.
That's how you do it. You know, I think you did. I think there's this, it usually asks you before it does it, but you can do this thing where you, let me do this. If you add intersect, it's one of these, but essentially what ends up happening, no, it's not that one, is you make it so it just becomes part of the image. So right now it's a mask, so I can turn it on or off. But you can actually, let me intersect it. Nope. Kelly, I can't recreate what you did,
It's okay.
but I know what you did. I just don't know how you did it. But there is a way to just like put it on there and say, you will be on here forever. And that's what you did, and that's okay. So recreate that one later, but for now, I'm gonna go back to the black border, and we are going to, there's a couple ways of doing this, but essentially it's really similar to what we just did for masking. We're gonna draw big marquees and then fill it in with black paint. So there's two ways of doing it. I can do M for marquee. See how I'm kind of grabbing where I want to paint it black? Then I switch to G, which takes me to my paint bucket, and I fill that in with black. I hit marquee again, I fill it, hit G, paint that in. Let me do it one other way. If you are comfortable, you can do it this way too. I need to turn on my history so I can back up. Okay, so remember the first time I drew a marquee? If I wanted to keep adding to this, do you see when I hold the shift key down, I get a plus sign? So that means the next thing I'm going to do is add to it. See how I added too much? If I hold the Alt key down, nope, hold on. Nope. Shift, Alt. Okay, it is Alt. It's going to be different for you, Darlene. I think for yours it's a Command and an Alt. Yep. So with this one, if I hold the Alt key down, I can subtract it. Okay?
What was the easy way to go back? Like if you just did something you didn't like to do.
Yep. So go to Window. Control Z only goes back once in Photoshop, unfortunately. But if you go to Window and then open up your history, you can go back as many as you want. Okay. So let me show you guys that one more time. I'm going to completely deselect it. So hit M to go to your marquee. Draw one of your rectangles, and then tell me again, what button do you hold to add? Shift. So shift to add. I'm just going to keep holding the shift key down because I'm adding a whole bunch. What button do I hit if I go too far? How do I subtract? Alt. Good. Alt subtracts from your selection. And then once you have it selected, how do I go back to the paint bucket? What's my shortcut? G. And remember, it's part of the gradient family. That's why bucket is G. And then go ahead and just click in there. It painted mine black. How do I deselect this area? Control D. Good. So you're just trying to crop the background layer? Okay, so you hit C for crop, right? So with this, you should just be able to grab a corner. It's really subtle. It's just like this little black thing right there.
Oh, I see yours. Let me just.
Now up here, yeah, hit Control D or Escape, either one of those. When you go to crop, do you see this menu up here? That'll let you know if you're in the crop. So this should be selected right here. It should have the crop icon there. Do you have those?
Then when I click on it, it does the whole sheet instead of just giving me like a little place to move it.
So it will automatically give you the whole sheet. It's up to you to drag these to where you want it to go. So see how now? Let me pause. So hit escape for me. I think you're just zoomed out too much. Hit Control 0 so we see the whole thing. And now hit escape one more time. And hit tab for me. Hit Control tab.
Taking you up.
Always. Oh, but how am I gonna do the home without you?
Now go ahead and try cropping it.
So you're in the crop tools and
Yep.
you just wanna, it's like, oh, there, but now how'd you get that to come back?
There you go.
How wide is it?
You were just zoomed out so far that you couldn't see the corners. Because you were looking here, it was that big, when your corners were all the way out here. Like it was off of the screen. And now you hit enter and it'll apply. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Doing the crop on this one and then maybe the levels, but I'll also show you guys how to use the skew and transform tools if you ever needed to kind of rotate something. So I'm going to go ahead and click on C for crop, maybe. There we go. And again, just like the last example, I don't care to do these exact because I want to add my own border to give it a little bit of a better size. So here I'm going to click on straighten, and I'm going to, whoa, that's not what I meant to do, sorry. So on straighten, there is an easier way of doing this, but let me run through that one more time. I'm going to hit Control Z. So while you're cropping, this is a new feature. You can click straighten, and essentially what you're going to do is you're going to grab a line that isn't straight, and you're going to tell Photoshop, this is the angle of the line that I want you to straighten. So as soon as I let go, do you see how it took everything and kind of straightened it? Now the way this board is though, I could have also selected this line right here. See how that does something a little bit different? So you kind of have to decide which one is best. So I'm going to come back to this one, but then I'll also show you in another step how to kind of skew it so that we can fix the bottom edges. Okay. So go ahead and at least try to straighten the top for me.
You have to do that while you're in the crop.
Yep, do that while you're in crop.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, just the straighten part of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so in your crop menu now, so if you go to C for crop, I'm just going to pull it in close like I did last time. Not too close, but close enough. And sorry, oh yeah, I am on the 5x7 still. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm hitting Control plus to zoom in. Do you see this little straighten button right here? So it looks just like a level that has a little bubble in it. And when you click on that, what Photoshop wants you to do is draw a reference line that isn't straight that you want it to be straight. So for example, if I made this line super skewed like this, do you see that it tries to straighten it? So the reason why it wants you to draw that line is you are setting the reference angle for it. And then after you do that, just go ahead and hit enter and it'll apply those changes for you. Okay. Now show of hands, does anybody still need a minute to crop and straighten? Darlene, did you need a sec for that?
Yes, because I've already done the layer where I turned everything black.
Mm-hmm. You can turn that off for now. Yep, and you can edit it later. Yep.
Okay.
So let me pause, let me know when you're ready. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys how to do some skewing. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. But it always works good enough is what I say. Now, right now, I'm just going to show you guys, I think, the easiest way of doing it. Like after all the years of doing it, this is kind of what I've boiled it down to. So I'm first going to turn on my rulers by, is it just R? Control R. Dang it. Darlene, will you hit Command R on your computer to see if your rulers turn on?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how to do it on this. Fine. Window. Workspace, maybe? Rulers?
Yeah, view rulers. It's on the view and then.
Oh, viewer and then rulers? Oh, Control R. What the heck? Okay. Control is command. Control is command. Control is command. Okay. So the reason why I like to turn on my rulers is that it helps me. So if I come from the left side, do you see where my cursor is? I can drag and place a ruler here, and then I can drag and place another ruler there. I'm not actually measuring, but I just need 2 straight lines for reference so that I know when those black lines come close to those blue lines that it's going to be pretty straight. Because sometimes I have a hard time eyeballing it, because there have been times where, let's say that this is how the drawing is skewed. If I didn't have a ruler but this is straight, I would straighten it like that. Like I'd essentially take it the exact opposite way, and then I look at it again and I'm like, wait a sec. So I like the ruler just as a visual reference. Okay? So I'm going to run through this and then we'll do it together. So just take a quick peek, because again, I don't even know how this is going to work out. But for this, you need to be in your move tool. So hit V. And then once you're in V, I'm going to hit Control T. And remember, I'm going to go through all of this in just a minute. Maybe. Or maybe I need to be in M. Control T. I don't know. Darlene, will you hit Command T on yours?
Yeah, it is Command T.
Is it? Okay, here we go. The reason why it wasn't working, my layer was locked. So I cheated. I did something really, really quick. Let me go back to open, crop, make guide, new guide. Okay, do you see how right now I have a lock on my background? As long as my background is locked, I can't transform it because it's locked. So just click on the little lock and it's unlocked. Adobe doesn't make it very hard to lock or unlock things. But now if I hit Control T, do you guys see that I get those selection points on my image? So now I can actually transform it. Not what I want to do. But if I ever wanted to make myself really skinny, that's the command. Yep. Now you know all those commercials. But let me go back to Control T. And remember, this isn't an exact science. This is not Revit. This is just gonna, we're gonna see what happens here. If I right click, there are so many things that I can do. I can scale, rotate, all of these things. Just know that if you ever needed to rotate it a little bit, you can come to the corner and rotate it. Do you see how the cursor changes? So Control T, see how it gets rounded? That lets you rotate it. But what I want to do now is Skew and Distort are, I think, the best 2 for this. Perspective should be the one to fix it, but it never does. Because when we take the picture, we don't have the right perspective anyway, right? But if I go to Skew and Distort, it allows me to basically skew and distort it more to where I need it to be. So let me try Skew first. And when you do Skew, now when I pull on this corner, do you see that I can pull it wherever I want? Like I'm really skewing it. But again, what I'm trying to get is for it to line up with this blue ruler. Do you see that? I'm going to try it again on this corner here. And that actually worked well. Yeah.
I spoke too soon. My toggle isn't working.
Your toggle?
My
Transform. So just make sure your background layer is unlocked and that you are in V, and then hit Command T. And it should take you right there.
Okay.
So do me a favor,
Now
try it.
It says layer 0. It changed from background to layer 0.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so now you should be okay.
All right.
Now when you hit Command T, your transform should turn up.
Okay. Sweet, thank you.
And then because you can go through that pretty quickly, Try it with Skew and then try it with Distort and see which one works better. And I'm going to go through that whole thing again a little bit slowly. So I'm going to go back to where I cropped, and I had to go to View and then Rulers or Control R to turn on my rulers. Once my rulers are on, I can come over to this side, drag and click, and then drag and click these reference lines. Now before I do anything else, before you do anything else, just make sure that the layer that you're working on is unlocked. Right now mine is locked, so if I did the Control T to transform, it would ignore me. So I'm going to click the unlock button. And now that it's unlocked, I can hit Control T and then right click. I did Skew before, and I'm going to try Distort this time. I'm going to see what Distort does, if it makes it easier or harder. Okay. For me, Distort was a little bit easier. I feel like with Skew, at some point, it really kind of grabs it from you, if that makes sense. Where Distort, it's really just letting me do whatever I want. That's my opinion, though. But I thought Distort was a little bit easier. What do you guys think? Were you able to skew it or distort it? Was it being nice? Yeah? Megan, you're good? Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm actually going to go back to crop and get rid of all this extra on this right side. And then hit enter. It's not a big deal if you do or don't, because remember that in InDesign, you're going to be putting this in its own frame anyway. Okay. Now I'm going to add levels to this. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot a little bit, Kelly, and you're right here in front of me. How do I add how do I put levels on here?
Circle at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Right click.
Right click? I guess you can right click too. Yeah, usually it's just a click. Yeah, click works too.
Put in the levels.
Yep. Good. And then from there, Darlene, it doesn't look like it did anything. What should I do next?
So once you're in levels,
Mm-hmm.
so what you want to do is the three little arrows or tick marks.
You got it.
that
Yeah.
are above,
Yep.
then you can play around with those until they're
Yeah.
the color that you want.
Mm-hmm. And here, sometimes there's presets. I rarely ever have luck with the presets. Like you can see midtones brighter, darker. Those usually don't work for me. So I usually just like to come in here myself and kind of just jump on it. And really, most of what I'm doing is on the far left or right, and then I kind of fine tune it in the middle. This one's tricky, but because I have so many grays, so it's kind of a fine line between making those muddy and still getting my blacks to work. Okay? But I think that works. I'm just going to leave it there. And then coming back to my layers, let's say, gosh, what do I want to turn off? Okay, because this is my hand rendering, I want to do this one all on my own. So Abby, will you help walk me through how I can turn off the levels with this one? What would be the first thing you would do?
Marquee tool.
Yeah, marquee tool. Now, I'm going to cheat. If I do the marquee tool right now, will it help me?
No, you gotta go to the level.
Yeah, so make sure that you are on the levels mask before you select anything, before you paint anything. I think that's one of the things that trips people up because this is so subtle, like what you have selected. So yes, make sure that you do M for marquee. Select this, okay? And then Hajir, what would be the next step? I have it selected. What should I do next to isolate it? Yep, so I've got the layer. Let's see. Yep, we're here. So Allison, will you help me with the next part? How do I actually isolate it? That's okay. Steph, how about you?
Or it's already masked?
It's already masked.
So you
Yep.
just need to
Well,
unmask.
kind of.
Well, okay, so it's not really masked right now. You need to like take it out of
Yeah.
unmask.
Yeah, so right now the whole thing is masked.
Yeah.
So whenever something is white, it means that it has that layer mask on it.
So you need to get the gradient and put the black mask.
Yeah, so the way that I look at it is on a mask, whenever you add black to it, so I just painted this black, that is essentially like the Harry Potter cloak of invisibility. It makes it so that you can't see the mask on that particular part. So do you see that right now? There's this tiny preview here, but there's something that I've recently learned. So if you took it last semester, you know. If you didn't take it last semester, you might not know. If you hit the backslash, do you see that it takes anything I've masked and it turns it red? Do you guys see that?
What are you hitting?
Backslash. So right above the enter key. So I think that that's a nice feature because for me, it's really hard to see this tiny thumbnail preview. But by hitting backslash, anything that's red is something that has been masked. And so in this case, we've turned the mask off of this, and so that we can kind of either mask it on its own or just have it ignore the mask that everything else has.
Does that do it individual layers, like by layer, or does that show all layers?
So right now,
I mean the red.
it would go through everything, all the
Oh,
or well,
Like,
sorry.
it doesn't itemize this was layered on.
No, it just does it for that particular mask that you have selected.
Okay.
Yep. So on this one, yep, it's just showing us that this part has been masked off. Okay. And if for some reason I came back and I was like, you know what? I liked it better with the mask on. How could I add this back into the selection? Right now it's painted black. What color would I need to paint it? White. Good. So I'd go back to gradient. I just flip this to make it white, or if I hit X, it toggles between. And now I don't even have to select it because I just know that wherever it was black, I know that it's black here, so if I click in here, it'll change it back to white.
So can you explain that again? Sorry, just trying to follow along how you did that.
Yeah, so right now it's masked, so it doesn't have the levels on it. And I've decided that, you know what, I liked it better with the levels. So to bring it back in, I need to essentially paint this white again.
Right.
So I went to my gradient, and then by default, this was black, but if I hit X while I'm in gradient, it just toggles these colors. So I hit X until white is the foreground color, and then I just click to paint.
You click on, okay.
Because even, you can't see this because it's a mask, but I have it selected. So it knows that it's painting on the mask itself. Okay? And I want to show you guys how to do one more masking selection. I might show you a couple more, but this doesn't really have to do with fixing your boards. It more has to do with creating your boards. See how right now these cushions don't have any color on them? Let's say that your client definitely wants like a custom fabric color, or they just don't want white cushions because they might have 2 young kids, whatever it is. So what we're going to do now I'm going to run through it and show you guys how to do it, and then we'll do it together. But if you want to try to follow along the first time, I'll try and go slow, but just know that I'm about to go through it one more time. So let's go back to our, I'm going to call it the right name, our adjustment layers, okay? And I want to go to Hue and Saturation. You guys see that one? It's kind of right in the middle. And for now, why don't you guys just go ahead and add it? We'll do it together right off the bat. So zoom in onto your sofa and then come down to Hue and Saturation. So Kelly, I'm looking at you. Or not.
Mine's not working, so I'm just watching.
It isn't? Try this one. So what we're doing right now is completely separate than the other stuff that we've done.
Oh, please.
Okay, so Hue Saturation. And then just to entertain me, go ahead and take this hue toggle and move it around. And see how it makes everything super crazy? Right? So essentially what it's doing right now is it's changing the color of everything, or it's adding that hue to it. But here's the thing that's a little bit weird. Right now when we're in the blues, is our plan blue? It isn't. So what you need to do you see this little button that says Colorize? Click on Colorize for me. And then what happens there is now it's actually adding the color that we're selecting here. Got it? Now before we get too far, let's go back to our layer. We've got this hue saturation layer right here. This whole thing is white, so it means that everything is fair game. Without actually doing it in Photoshop, where do we actually want the white to be limited to? The sofa cushions. And what color should everything else be? Black, right? So here's what I would do. Everybody click on W for wand. Actually, even before I do that, did everybody get theirs to change into weird wonky colors? Madison, you got yours? Okay, good. So as long as we have weird wonky colors, that's fine. Let's hit W for wand and just make sure you're in the quick selection tool. We're just going to do a really quick selection of the cushions. It's okay if it isn't perfect, but we're just going to start with the cushions. And then what we're going to do, click on layer 0 so we have something to select. And just kind of, oh, whoa. I tried clicking and dragging and it grabs the whole thing. Is that what you guys are seeing? Do you do one click and it grabs the whole sofa, or the whole square of the sofa? Okay, jerk. Hit L for lasso. And right click on your lasso up here at the top and go to the Polygonal Lasso. Did I lose anybody yet? No? Okay. And essentially this lasso is just like a click and drag select. So I just like to click every once in a while, and I'm essentially just tracing around what I want my selection to be. So I'm getting as close to the cushion as possible. Again, these are not construction documents. It does not have to be perfect, just enough to fool your client. Okay. And then as soon as you get back to where you started from, it should automatically give you the ants marching, or hit enter and it'll close it for you. Most of the time I just can't see where I was before, so it takes me a minute. Okay. Once you have it selected, go back to your hue saturation, and we want to essentially fill the opposite of this with the color black, right? So right now, what do we have selected? We have the sofa selected, right? But we want the opposite of the sofa. So do this for me. Right click right now And do you guys see something in your right click that will help you or help us? Yep. Select inverse. Do you guys see that? Okay. Select inverse. And now hit G for gradient. Hit X so you can toggle through to the right color if it's not already on black. And then fill that in. Now, do you guys see that I have a minty sofa and everything else went back to being normal? Okay. You guys are going to think I'm crazy. Did that kind of sort of work? Almost? Okay. So if it worked or it didn't work, take that layer, both pieces, and delete it for me. So delete the mask and delete the hue saturation. And I'm going to show you guys an easier way of doing it. It'll save you a couple steps. If it breaks your heart to delete it, just turn it off. Okay? Unclick the eye. I saw a couple people like, what? All that and then that? Okay. Okay, so for this next way of doing it, don't forget, turn off the original one, delete it.
So just do deselect?
Nope. So do you see the little eyeball? Turn off the eyeball for me.
Oh, well, it's funny because I deleted the whole layer.
Yeah.
But then the couch was still.
Oh, selected. Control D. Yep, Control D. Okay. So once you get back here, it doesn't matter what layer you're on. What we can do now is if we know that we only want to color the sofa, let's go back into Lasso and select the sofa first before we do anything. This is a much easier way of masking something. And you'll see why in just a sec.
And we have to be on levels? to
Nope.
do that?
It doesn't matter where you are for this one.
Okay.
The only thing that you need to do is to be able to see the object that you're tracing around. Okay. And I'll wait for you guys here. Does everybody have their ants marching? I need to think of a better term for that, but I mean, how do you replace ants marching? Okay. And what was that, Janelle?
I was trying to think of what.
It's really a selection method, but it's hard to explain for me other than ants marching. So here's the thing that's nice. If you pre-select something, now if I go down here and do hue saturation, if I go to my layers, it automatically knows that's what you want the selection to be on. Do you guys see that it did it automatically this time? So it went ahead and it masked that particular area.
It doesn't show that it's masked.
It should. So if you look in your preview, do you see that mine is essentially a sea of black? Or hit the backslash button. Mine is a sea of red, and then just the sofas are showing through.
Oh, then it should.
You guys see that? Okay. So Kelly,
In the red, I guess.
backslash right above the enter key. Let me do this. So now, let me do one other thing. Go to your properties, and before you start changing the color, what do you guys need to do?
Colorize?
Colorize, good. If you turn on Colorize, then you can actually see the color you're applying. Let's say I wanted a red sofa. Take a look at my screen real quick. See how when I go to red, it's still not very red? But if I bump up the saturation and the lightness, I can really get a red sofa out of this. So the next time you guys are ordering a shirt on J.Crew and you can't figure out how the exact same model is wearing the exact same shirt in 10 different colors, this is how they do it. They colorize the different layers so one person in one shirt can have all the different colors. Yeah, so if you don't have Colorize on, let me turn this off. This is really hard for me to do because essentially it's color mixing. So if you add sky blue to white, or basically any other color, you're primarily still going to have a white object. Let me turn off the mask real quick so you can see what it looks like. Let me disable the mask. So see how right now everything's blue? But right now I'm on the red color. Essentially what it's doing, I'm trying to think. So brown and yellow apparently make this purple color, because like the brown is a red tone. I'm really bad at mixing colors. So brown and this green color equal this pinkish color. Pretty much, yeah. So it's essentially just mixing the color, and you can still play with the saturation and lightness, but truthfully, I think that Colorize is the best way to go. So you can just see what color you want as that end result. Let me go back. Yep. Okay. So that's how you can change the color of an item. Yeah, I like that a lot.
If you had multiple colors like that bench, would it work? Or what would happen?
It would still work, but it would be different colors across the spectrum. So like if you were adding red to it, well, you can just see. So like right now, if I hit lasso, let me just trace around the bench. So Janelle, I'm going to have you walk me through this. As soon as I have this selected, what other step do I need to take to add it to this mask?
You need to paint it black, so you need the gradient tool.
Yep, I go to gradient, but this time I'm adding it to it, so I want it to be white. See how it's already black? Yep. So right now I'm in black. How do I flip it to white? X. Good. Yeah, it pretty much looks red.
So, okay.
I didn't think,
This will do one color
yeah, I
color.
didn't think that the Colorize would work so well across a rainbow, but it still works well. Okay. So that's how you can colorize something. So really the thing to take away from today is that these mask selections and learning how to properly mask and, you know, toggle through what's masked and not being masked, it really helps so much.
Kind of review the first layer you did, the level 1.
Mm-hmm.
That was more just the overall board, and you changed the color. And then when you did the second layer, you isolated the couch.
Yep.
So the first layer still changed,
Mhm.
everything still changed, but now you're changing the couch even more.
Yeah.
On its own. Okay.
Yep. And usually with any Photoshop document that I work on, there are just masks on top of masks on top of masks. And the thing that I still don't have is the border on this one. So I would still need to go through and add that black border too. Because see how I still have the background of the desk here? Phew, excuse me. So I would still add a new layer, and I'd call it border. I would do my M for marquee. Tell me what key to hit to keep adding to it. Good. Yep, shift. There you go. That's your border. So going back to the Instagram post, right? What I did is first I found, so the top one is the original. If you ever want to stalk me, I'm in Sugar House. Come say hi. I dead end off of 2000 East and like 20th South, like right there. So we've had our house for 7 years, and we don't know what to do with it because we had no idea that the real estate market would do what it did. So now we're like, oh, this might be our forever home. Like if we sold our house, we can't afford to buy anything else. So we're like, do we tear it down? What do? We don't know what we're doing, but we need to do something. And so part of that is just fixing up the front. And actually, my garage door does not look like this. I will show you what it looks like. I had to fix the front of my garage door because all of the paint is peeling off. So people, it is worse than this. And every time my mom comes over, she's like, broken teeth look horrible on people and they look bad on your garage door too. So I just went online and I found a garage door I liked. And in fact, I'm really not that sophisticated. I'm sure if I do this search again, you guys will see the exact garage door. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, if the original one looked like this, what Photoshop things did I use to make it fit this? What did we learn today? Yeah, I did distorts and skews. And then the other thing that I did that I didn't show you guys is if you go to Control T, you can also flip your image horizontal or vertical. So I essentially flipped it and then I skewed it. I should have changed the color, but I did not change the color.
How did you plop it onto your,
Oh, like from document to document? So what you can do there is you can grab any layer, right? And right click on it. And do you see where it says duplicate layer? I think I'm doing this right. Yeah. So you can either duplicate it in this document here, or if you pull down, you can put it in a new one or any other document that's open.
so you had your house open and the garage door open. You isolated the picture of the garage.
Yep.
And then placed it into your picture and then just adjusted it until it was right.
Yeah. So I just opened it up and plopped it in there. Now there is actually one other thing I want to show you.
It fits whatever you decide to do.
Yeah. So here is what the paint flakes really look like. And so what I did, I always put everything I do on a new layer. Okay, so I don't heal on top of this because I want to preserve pixels. So that when I do go to a contractor or whoever, if I'm actually texting this to them, I can show them a picture of what the garage door looks like. But there's this little band-aid here, and I usually go to the healing brush tool, not the spot healing. I'll try both. But with this, the thing that's great is right now, when I'm in the healing tool, do you see that I can do current layer or all layers? I only have one, so it doesn't matter if I do current and below or all layers. It's the same thing. Do you guys see that? Yeah, I'm recording this part. And I can send this to you guys, but if I do all layers, the thing that's great, if I just, whoops, let me come here. So I lied, I used the spot healing brush. Why aren't you working? Let me do this one more time. Oh wait, sample all layers is now on. So it's usually pretty good at this. It just takes, it looks at all the pixels around it and it tries to guess what to do with it. And the thing that's nice about this is it ends up looking better, I think, than if I were just to match. So I hit I, and by hitting I, it matches the paint color of my door. If I were to try and come brush this, I don't know. They might end up looking the same, but I personally think that it looks better to go through and do the spot healing. So let me go back to spot healing down here. Not perfect, but still pretty close. So a little bit better. And then don't even get me started on the columns and the roof. One day, slowly but surely. But yeah, I used Photoshop to mock that up really quickly. I also added the wood back up here because we're pretty sure that there's wood behind these because that's what's around our front door. So really easy to use Photoshop. And in fact, this is a hue saturation layer. So it's an easy way just to quickly paint the garage door and then paint my house. But because it's a hue saturation layer, it doesn't, so if you were to make a new layer and just paint it black, it looks like a black blob. But by doing hue saturation, you're actually changing the color of that object. That's why when you see the woman in the J. Crew catalog, the shirt always has the same shadows on it. It doesn't look like a solid blob of t-shirt because it's the hue saturation.
Do you have stone in between the brick? Is that stone?
Nope, I only have a stone planter right here, but everything is brick. That's the only stone that we have. All right, what did I not cover?
Are you going to talk about InDesign at all today?
Probably not today. I can hop in. Well, actually, we can if that's. Are there, before we get into InDesign though, are there any Photoshop questions? Like if you guys are thinking of your boards or any of your projects, is there anything that I may not have covered that you're like, well, what about this one thing?
This was good.
Okay. If something comes up over the next week or so, just let me know and we'll do it in class and kind of add it to our list of videos. So let me pause real quick. I'm just going to create a new fake document and run through a couple things with you guys. So here's an 8.5 by an 8.5 facing pages. And here you can see that by default I have margins and bleed and slug able to be set up. But I'm just going to create it as is. And then once I have the document, I'm going to change these things. Okay? So I'm going to take Megan's example of your margins. And let's say that I know that in my layout, I'm going to go to margins and columns. I know that on my, so this would be considered my inside margin, because if you think of how it's being bound, that's the inside of the book and then the open part is the outside. I'm going to turn off the chain so they're no longer linked. Let's say that the company says that you need at least 0.45 inches for there, and then everything else I'm going to set to 0 because I can have everything else print all the way to the border. Okay, do you guys see what I did there? So I just did the 0.45 that the printing company told me to add for the binding, and then 0 inches everywhere else. So those are my new margins and columns. Okay, and again, this won't print. This is just there to remind me that pretty much everything here can get a hole punch through it. So don't put text there, put color there, but don't put any text in that area. Okay. So the next thing that I'm going to add is the bleed area. So that is under File and then Document Setup. So a little bit different area. And then here, do you see where it says bleed and slug? Okay, I'm going to expand that and turn on preview. So the bleed area is where you will be printing, and the slug area is really the same thing, but slug area is where you put notes. So if you ever put like printer marks, like okay, this is a good example of this. Has anybody looked at like a cereal carton or any sort of package carton, and somewhere on that carton they have all the colors they used to print it? Or am I the only weirdo that notices stuff like that? No? Okay. Okay, go home and any packaged food you have, like macaroni and cheese, maybe even yogurt bottles, start spinning it around and you will find a little strip that shows all of the colors they used to print it. It's like an overprint. So something like that would go in your slug area. And it would even say like little directions on how to print it. So we would never see it because it's hidden in the slug area. But what we're looking for primarily is the bleed. So right now, take a look at what happens to my screen. So again, the bleed area depends on your printer. So if you're printing a SLCC and you know that you're going over the edge, call them and say, how much of a bleed area do you need? I know that when I printed the U with their digital press, they automatically compensate for it, so I don't need a bleed area. But call SLCC, work with the people at Blurb, wherever you're printing, just look up what the bleed area is. And for the most part, it's really small. So I'm going to add 1/4 inch, which is probably too much. But do you guys see that now I have this red box here? This new red margin? So this new red area will never print, but it just gives me enough area to kind of extend my graphics so that they can be cropped off. It's just a little bit of breathing room so that whether it's printing or cutting, it has that area. Okay, so you can still put images here, but just know that it will be cut off. Right, and I'm going to hit OK. So that's how you would add a bleed. So again, bleed is under File, Document Setup, and your margins are under Layout, Margins and Columns. I'm just going to show you guys one other thing, and this is like way beyond what you would need to do for this class.
So, Lila, before you
Yeah.
move forward, then we will have to do this on our portfolio ones, or before, we should do it before we even start
Yeah.
doing anything else.
Yep, so if you know that you have an overprint and you're not printing at the U, but you're printing here or even blurb, find out what that bleed is. 1/4 of an inch is a good bleed to have. Nobody's going to say do a 1/2 inch bleed. 1/4 inch is good. Usually 1/8 inch is about the wiggle room that they want. Okay?
But even like changing your margins, you should give yourself that space for
The
where we
0.45, you know, I don't know about the 0.45, only because it's going to be so different. So, for example, Kelly, she's going to be using the binder rings, so she won't need a margin. It's going right into a sleeve, and so the way she's binding isn't affected.
Okay.
But when I did my portfolio at school, I took my 11 by 17s and actually punched those directly and had those coil bound. So I had to take that into consideration. Blurb, I don't know how much of it lays flat, so you might not want your text so far into the margin, but it's all going to be a little bit different depending on how you're doing it. Okay. But again, the thing that I'm about to show you guys is way above and beyond what you'd ever need to do. But I'm just going to save something called a test. And actually, let me do this. You know, it might not matter. Let me see what comes up. So I'm going to, on my desktop, save a PDF called a test. And when I'm doing this, again, this isn't something we've done, but do you see that I have something called marks and bleeds? I'm just turning everything on for now. So all the marks, all the bleed and slug, include slug area. You guys see that I did all of that? Now I'm going to export it. Okay. So here are the color bars that I talked about that you might find on packaging. This also has my crop area. So this first crop area is my slug area, my bleed and slug area. Remember how I added the extra 1/4 inch? So it's first saying, okay, here's the first 1/4 inch, and then the other two are the crop marks if you actually wanted to crop it down. And then, remember the slug that I told you about? The slug area by default tells me when I printed it and the name of the document.
And that'll print on your.
Yep. But again, this is if you were to take this from like the graphic design department, if we were to do InDesign from the graphic design department, we would spend weeks on stuff like this, like how to prepare a document for publishing. But we aren't really publishers. We're just sending it to printers that just about everybody else uses. Okay? But I wanted to show you where they originate from. Right. Does anybody else need a review on what I just went over? No? Okay. Now, Janelle, I'm going to go through and answer how to add background color and change the color of your text.
Okay,
So,
and then while you're doing that, maybe talk about the master pages, because that's also where I'm having
okay.
trouble. What is the difference between master and how we use it and print it in PDF?
So your master page isn't something that you would print. Your master page is just something that you would use to create a template for your other pages to copy. So if you made a whole bunch of master pages up here, you would essentially copy and paste them down, but I wouldn't drag and drop them down because that's just making kind of copies of your masters. So I'd copy and paste them down.
So you can make one double, like your book's going to be open 2 pages. You can make that in a nice template, and then every time you're ready to print something, you bring that down.
Yep, or not print something, but make a new layout. Yep.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So I'm going to do this simply first. I'm going to make a couple more pages. See how they're all master A? And I have one master A up here. So I'm going to come up to my master and I'm going to do a big marquee and I'm going to make this black. So color, black. So now when I go to my pages, see how these are all black, right? Let's say that I'm going to come back up to my master. I'm going to make another set. But this time, I want this one to be a different color. I want this one to be that color. So now, if I add new pages, sorry, I'm in the wrong, still in the wrong. So see how these are still black? I can drag and drop master B onto these and see how it applies it onto those sheets. Okay, and whatever I do on B, whether it's like grabbing a pencil tool, see how that came up there and here?
Because you copied it, it came on both?
Nope, I didn't copy it. Because this is the master, anything that happens here is going to happen here.
Oh, okay, once you have drug it down?
Mm-hmm.
What if you don't want to use your master and you want to do something original, can you?
Yeah, you can just do something blank by putting none on here. Whoops.
But you have to put something, you either have to put none or A or B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, it has to have something. So that would be where you'd kind of start from scratch. But what I'll do, I will post a lecture that goes over master pages because we won't have time to go through all of it today. But I'll give you my overview from last semester so you can play with it a little bit more. But let me go back to adding color to the background of maybe like a text box and how it might affect. So I'm going to go ahead and create a frame. And I'll do T for text, and I just want to put my name in here. Okay, I spelled it right. Thank goodness. And I'm going to do the same thing where essentially I'm going to go to color. And right now I have the container and then I have the text. See that really subtle difference? So here's the container. I'm going to make the container black. Right? So it looks like my text disappeared because now I have black text and a black container. But if I hit on T for text, I can now make my text white or whatever other color I want. Okay?
You do that under the color tab.
Yep, that's under the color. And you can, again, you can flip between container and text.
And that individualizes whatever frame you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the whole page.
Yep, it's just whatever container that you're in.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Let me do one other thing while I'm in here. Let me fill with placeholder text. Do you see that now, because this frame is a color, it looks like my words are kind of running into the side of the frame? So what you can do to fix that is click on the frame and then right click and go to text frame options. Okay, so again, the way that I did that, I click on the frame, right click and go to frame options or Control B. And I think this ends up looking a lot nicer. First, I'm going to turn on preview. And do you see over here where it has inset spacing? It's locked, so everything's going to move together. But do you see how it's adding a little bit of a border or an inset around it? So you can make that really small just to give it some breathing room, like that. Let me copy this. Or let me do the Control B. I never use it that way, but I should. Or you can make it bigger so that it insets a little bit more. But either way, I think it looks better than it going right up to the edge. Okay. So again, that was a right click, text frame options, and then inset spacing. And then from here,
Bleeding a little bit. Did you choose that?
which one?
Your color is kind of bleeding from bright to dim.
I don't think so. I think that's just a graphic card thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it should all be the same. By the time it projects to you, who knows what we're looking at. But here, again, if I wanted to change the text color, so actually, Janelle, I want you to walk me through it. If I wanted to change this from blue to green, what would my first step be?
Okay, so you're in your box and color, and you would click on the text box.
Wait, am I in my box and color yet?
Oh, well.
No, not yet. So click on it first. Yep, so first click on it, and then you can tell it's selected. Good. So T for text. Good.
And then you'll just play with the color?
Yeah. These look pretty awful.
The other programs?
Yep. Or here, sometimes I don't like the color selection tool in InDesign, but if you come over to this big T down here, do you see this one? You get a bigger color wheel. Wait, but it's not adding it.
Because I struggled around with this.
Well, it's not very helpful because is it changing it? No. So it's letting me pick a color, but it's not giving me a preview. Where over here, it's applying it automatically.
And I see the box on the left is changing. Is that a box you can click to get it?
This one right here?
On the very left side now, you have the pink box, like under T, you have the pink box.
This one right here?
Right there.
So this one, yeah, it's selected, but this color is already applied. That just lets me know what color I've selected. Yep.
And then if you wanted to go in and change background, you could do that here too. You
Yeah.
could just go up to that other box and
Mhm.
make it white or yellow.
Yeah, so just grab the container and then switch it from here.
Okay, that is, thank you. That's what was causing me so much trouble.
You're welcome. I hate showing you guys this, but I will show you this. You can always right click on a container too and add effects, like a drop shadow. Wait for it, there's preview. Don't drop shadow everything now. I will be so mad, but you can. Sometimes if I put AutoCAD plans down and if I wanted to show like 10 of them, like I've done a lot, what I'll do is I'll just stack them on top of each other and do a little bit of a drop shadow so people can see that there's multiple of them. But you can do drop shadows too on these things. Okay. Anything else while I'm in InDesign that you guys ran into?
If anybody else, I don't want to call you all, but, I was trying to do the Revit, you know we have a Revit PDF and it's got a bunch of pages.
Uh-huh.
And so, do I have to somehow isolate each of those pages
Nope.
to pull it in? I couldn't get it to pull in, it kept playing the first page.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through this again. So let me find, I know on my desktop I probably have a PDF here. So here's my, I'm assuming this is my syllabus, right? And you know that my syllabus is several pages. What you have to do is turn on Show Import Options. Do you see that button right there?
So, as you do Control D,
Mhm.
then as you're pulling this out, that's what you do?
Yep. So I'm going to back up. So here's my frame. I hit Control D. The only thing you need to do is turn on Show Import Options, because when you do that, now, before it places anything, whoops, wait, where did I go? Here's a preview of the PDF. Oh, this is lame. It's only 2 pages, but now it's letting you tell it what page to pull in. And remember, you can tell it to be a transparent background or whatever background. So I'm pretty sure that this lecture is in one of like the first 4 lectures I put in. I'll show you exactly where it is right now, but I want it to not be a transparent background so that when it comes in, whoops, I don't know what I'm doing. First, let me size this like that. And now let me fit the frame to it. Now that it isn't transparent, see how it can go above these without the yellow coming through? If I pulled it in as a transparent one, let me do it one more time, transparent. And depending on what you're doing, you may want this or not. Do you see how the other content comes through?
Right, so if you
I think so. I usually do. Okay. But let me hop into YouTube real quick.
So not an InDesign question, but, like that sheet that has your title block on it,
Mm-hmm.
how much of those full sheets do you think should be in there?
I think sometimes it's hard looking at a whole bunch of those. So I wouldn't put in a lot of them. What I would do, if it's somebody that's specifically hiring you for Revit, send them a PDF in addition to your portfolio. So I would do maybe like 1 or 2 full sheets, and then details are better, like zoom in to details that are on those sheets, like a full interior elevation or a full 3D view. But it's too hard, I think, trying to read them on the sheet. Okay, so with the refreshers, so in our lectures, this one right here, simple image placement, important editing, that's where you would be able to find how to pull in a PDF.
Welcome to our third.
It's only 15 minutes, so it should be
these,
easy to find. And I think it's at the very end.
This one might work really big. D to pull really quick examples. Again, you can hit pause a little bit. When I hit Command,
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in this one. But it's just that show
but
import options that you're
make
looking
the image
for.
larger within the frame.
Okay. All right, anything else? Should I post this one? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause it then.